editorial is my own opinion and does not reflect the views of any companies to whom I may be currently attached or have been attached in the past. Specific quotes will be from publicly accessible articles which will be linked to in the bibliography in the info section of this video. Several times through this editorial, I refer to Hollywood. Please take this to mean the North American big-budget blockbuster film industry, not the specific city, or not even necessarily the remnants of the film industry within said city exclusively. If you're anything like me, most blockbusters released last year, and the year before that, and the year before that, etc., have increasingly left you feeling rather meh. Generally speaking, most of the recent wide releases that I was able to see exhibited a high level of polish, and I enjoyed most of the ones I saw to a degree, but across the board there was something missing. A sense of inventiveness, imagination, and genuine heart seems to have been worn down with a belt sander, replaced with a checklist of marketing and franchise-related requirements. Judging by the historically low box office returns for the summer of 2017, it seems I'm not alone in this general sense of ennui. Summer blockbusters were once a sharp exclamation point, a cultural event. Now we churn them out on a near weekly basis, calculated products machined by robots in suits. Yes, there are exceptions, but not nearly enough to banish the nagging thoughts at the back of my mind, the needling feeling that the film industry is getting desperate, that the motivations guiding most studios have less to do with creative integrity and more to do with franchise building. Yet these same studios gape in disbelief as audiences fail to show up for their mass-produced homogenized offerings like Pirates of the Caribbean 5, in favor of the low-budget, risky, R-rated Twilight Zone-esque Get Out. The Hollywood of old has fallen ill. It ignored all warning signs in the past and continues to keep its fingers in its ears as long as the prospect of making quick money is dangled in front of its sniffling nose. For the good of future mass-market films, Hollywood must be allowed to die. It can no longer die with dignity. That time has passed, yet it must be put down all the same. Our journey today has 4 parts. Let's begin. Part 1. A dire warning. There was a time when having the name Steven Spielberg attached to a movie almost guaranteed funding from any one of the major studios. Currently, though, we find the industry at an extraordinary time of upheaval, where even proven talents are finding it difficult to get original movies into theaters. Creative upstarts like the Duffer Brothers, responsible for the smash hit that is the Stranger Things series, were passed over on directing the It remake due to their lack of experience at the time. As someone pitching scripts and trying to make a name for myself, I know full well the pain of having a story loved by all who read it, yet simply not being given the chance to make it a reality. These days, it's not just small fries being ignored. Steven Spielberg had to fight tooth and nail to even get the chance to make his movie Lincoln. As Mr. Spielberg and George Lucas both had a huge hand in defining the term blockbuster, hearing them come together to predict the implosion of the film industry as we know it was chilling. They recognize that studios no longer want to take risks on art when they could just buy the rights to milk a franchise. And that's the big danger, and there's eventually going to be an implosion or a big meltdown. There's going to be an implosion where 3 or 4 or maybe even a half dozen mega-budget movies are going to go crashing into the ground, and that's going to change the paradigm, said Spielberg. Could it be that he's just grown bitter towards an industry that seems to be moving past him? Or are these wise words of warning from someone who's been in the film industry since before blockbusters were even a thing? Let's look at current trends in cinema and see how this dire tiding matches up with any kind of reality. This brings us to Part 2, Symptoms. When thinking about modern blockbusters, how they seem to flit from cinema to streaming to disc to Walmart bargain bin all in less than a year, it's important to remember what the life cycle of big movies looked like decades ago. For example, the 1983 film E.T. the Extraterrestrial stayed in theaters for a year and 4 months. The second highest grossing movie from 2017, the live-action remake of an animated adaptation of a fairy tale, Beauty and the Beast, was released in the US on March 17th and hit home video on June 6th. Now, I couldn't find the exact date it left mass theaters, but if we take the domestic premiere to the home video release, that's still a run of less than 3 months. Absolutely pitiful in comparison to E.T.'s year and 4-month run. Now, what could be behind such a difference? I think part of the reason has to do with how unique E.T. was in its time, coupled with the fact that very few blockbuster-style movies existed at that time. Keep in mind, E.T. came out of nowhere, where Beauty and the Beast already had millions of fans the world over. If E.T. were released for the first time today, it probably wouldn't do as well. So Beauty and the Beast's lack of legs can't be blamed on the film's quality, though we will touch on that later. The biggest issue we're dealing with right now is cinematic gluttony. Do you like big blockbuster movies, the kind that will make $1 billion but will never be financially profitable thanks to Hollywood's shady accounting practices? If so, here's the insane slate of blockbusters 2018 has to offer, and has already offered. Avengers Infinity War, Ready Player One, Pacific Rim 2, Aquaman, Toy Story 4, Deadpool 2, Black Panther, The Flash, How to Train Your Dragon 3, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Jurassic World 2, The Predator, Jungle Book Origins, Mary Poppins Returns, Tomb Raider, Alita Battle Angel, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them 2, The Secret Life of Pets 2, an animated Spider-Man movie, Hotel Transylvania 3, The Wolfman, Wreck-It Ralph 2, and the Star Wars Han Solo spin-off no one asked for, the Transformers Bumblebee spin-off no one asked for, Maze Runner The Death Cure, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Gigantic. And then there are the spots in the schedule studios have claimed, but haven't specified what movies are going to be released. Some of these movies have been canceled. Some of these movies have been pushed. Additional films have been placed in. Release schedules are shifting constantly. That said, there is a lot of money being thrown at the glut of remakes, sequels, prequels, and spin-offs. If we look at the Spielberg film that made him a household name, we see blockbusters like Jaws, E.T., Poltergeist, Jurassic Park, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I could go on and on. Now, there are a couple book adaptations here, but by and large, the list of blockbusters by the man who co-pioneered the blockbuster as a concept were unique, original, and emotionally resonant. Backtracking, 2017's Beauty and the Beast is a remake of an existing, well-loved movie with all the life, resonance, and magic sucked out. What's the big gain of remaking such a classic? It's no longer animated. Is that a good thing? Is Disney trying to send a message that traditional animation is a bad thing? Regardless, they're essentially sawing the kneecaps off their own legacy by attempting to eclipse their own animated classic with a mediocre big-budget live-action remake. Essentially, Hollywood at large has gotten so desperate to connect with modern audiences that it's limping along on the selling point of graphics updates and consumer nostalgia for better movies. Returning to the upcoming slate of films, it's impossible for them to all make their money back. Even if the Pacific Rim sequel was any good, which it wasn't, Black Panther was still selling tickets at a record pace. What if the potential market was left for the book adaptation A Wrinkle in Time, or the remake of the reboot to a game franchise like Tomb Raider? Regardless of quality, they never had a chance. This goes a long way towards explaining why movies make far less money. Theater attendance across the board is down, and new movies have much shorter legs than the blockbusters in the past. Yet there's still a paradox here. Less and less people are watching movies in theaters, but studios are making more than ever on theatrical releases. Why? The average price of a ticket has nearly doubled, from $4.35 in 1995 to $8.43 in 2015. Here in 2018, $8.43 looks like a steal. The theater business has weaker prospects going forward than at any time in the last 30 years, says media analyst Hallvogel. It's encountering visible strain this summer. It's a superhero mega blockbuster tentpole strategy run amok. There's too much of it, and it's not working. On the face of it, the last several years in particular, Spielberg's prediction seems to be coming true. Yet despite the warnings and data, movie studios are hesitant to change. The concern is that the slump isn't just a run of bad luck. Cinema operators have managed for years to keep increasing sales by raising ticket prices amid stagnant attendance, but a sharp drop in film going would make that harder to sustain. And the tried and true formula of churning out big budget sequels and cinematic universes populated with super beings seems to be wearing on film goers. Movies featuring once reliable draws, Jack Sparrow, The Transformers, and The Mummy, did poorly in the United States. But of course, the natural response to this is the typical internal scream of "make better movies then." But unless it is something that can be quantified on a checklist that's easy to understand for shareholders, studio executives seem allergic to pulling the trigger on art over commerce when this much money is on the line. This is a dangerous place for them to be in, as the audience can go to many other platforms of entertainment that bypass mega studios entirely. Netflix Incorporated and other digital distributors are creating more original movies, and consumers have more demands on their attention than ever, from Snapchat to YouTube. Outside of putting internal systems in place that change the way their movies are made and marketed to favor creativity, something that is not going to happen, studios need to find a way to compete for the viewer's attention. The big shadow hanging over the industry is whether studios will push to shorten the time between theater and home release of their movies, from the standard 3 months to within weeks after theater attendance starts dropping off. The concern is that a premium video-on-demand offering would give consumers less incentive to go see a movie in theaters, knowing they could watch it at home within weeks. Now, personally, if I could watch every new release in my living room, I would, but that might just be me. Another facet of old Hollywood that is showing symptoms of collapse is the very concept of a movie star. There was a time when having someone like Humphrey Bogart, Tom Hanks, or Tom Cruise's name attached to a film all but guaranteed success. But this too has changed. The art of managing a star's career has to become challenging in Hollywood's new economy. In years past, major projects could be pre-sold worldwide on star names. But distributors know they can't be monetized to the same degree anymore. Warner's may have poured $200 million or so into Batman v Superman, but its potential success didn't depend on Ben Affleck's chemistry with Henry Cavill. Hollywood executives still want to believe in stars' power to get bums in seats, so they will bet again on a headliner even after a few flops. There's some risk aversion in this. If they make a flop with a big name on it, they're less likely to have to defend their decision to greenlight the film. This conservatism tends to favor the white male actors that have already attained superstar status over the selection of new and diverse talent, as does the fact that the decision makers are predominantly white males too. The stars with the biggest global profiles, such as Tom Cruise and Leonardo DiCaprio, are instantly recognizable in lucrative overseas markets. But much of the industry's recent success at home and abroad comes from the rise of big special effects event films, franchises like Fast and the Furious, The Avengers, Hunger Games, Jurassic Park, James Bond, and Star Wars. Where audiences once showed up for a star, they now show up for a specific brand of spectacle. But what happens when there's so much spectacle in every major release that is just not exciting, unique, or interesting anymore? Number crunchers at Epigogics, a company in London, use an algorithm to project box office takings of films based on their story elements, including the use of special effects, a surprise ending, or a cool location. And they reckon that as long as stars look good and can act, they make scant difference, with at best a very few exceptions. It helps to have a damsel in distress, but it does not really matter which damsel. These symptoms have led to the film industry to push hard into foreign markets, especially in China, where people haven't yet tired of Hollywood's antiquated bag of tricks. Foreign cinemas like to exhibit films with known names in lead roles. Some old school stars are still big draws, the likes of Mr. Cruise or even, apparently, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Hollywood is making these gigantic movies not just for American audiences, but for the rest of the world too. Mostly China. Pacific Rim got a sequel, even though it only recouped $101 million domestically of its $191 million budget. But then it made $114 million in China alone, with a grand total of $411 million worldwide. Warcraft was a colossal failure by American standards, making a pathetic $46 million domestically on a budget of $160 million. And it's more than likely getting a sequel after it reeled in $376 million worldwide, with $156 million of that coming from China alone. It beat out the box office totals of The Force Awakens and every Marvel movie ever. The American film industry is going to keep pumping out gigantic movies, even if they suck terribly and their predecessors bombed there, because nothing gets lost in translation when the movie you're trying to sell overseas is about robots punching monsters. While Hollywood's main thrust once hinged upon delivering experiences, it has now become a struggling fireworks factory, desperate to find that one group of people who've never seen their stale 4th of July show before. The audience of 18 to 39-year-olds has declined over the past 5 years, according to the Motion Picture Association of America. There are pockets of age groups and demographics that have not been inspired by what they're seeing in movie theaters, says Bud Mayo, president of Carmike Cinema's Alternative Programming and Distribution Division. With social media, the reaction time is instantaneous. If kids don't like it, word spreads. At a time when filmmakers like to blame critics or aggregate sites for their latest film's failure at the box office, more and more young people are using social media, where movie recommendations and otherwise are delivered instantaneously by friends. They're more informed than ever, and the blame of poor returns on reviewers only shows just how out of touch Hollywood has become. At the same time, TV and online content continues to be compelling, with production values that rival those on the big screen. For a new generation of cinephiles, Ned Stark being separated from his head on Game of Thrones, or Walter White cooking meth in his underwear on Breaking Bad, are pop culture totems. Little of what's left in the Cineplex has that kind of impact. There's been a shift in the way people are consuming content, and it's moving away from the big screen, says Bruce Nash, founder of the box office tracking site The Numbers. Producer Mike Medavoy says the box office malaise is symptomatic of the larger problem of engaging moviegoers who have a wide variety of alternatives, from Netflix to Pokemon Go. I've been deeply concerned for a long time by the fact that there are so many other options besides movies, he says. Millennials can play games or watch movies at home on a big screen, so repeating the same content over and over at the movie theater doesn't really make sense. If you don't give people something that's fresh and new, they're not going to show up. It's a looming disaster that's been more than a decade in the making. Some of it is self-inflicted, brought about by a mixture of greed and fear, aided by a profound and troubling lack of imagination. The consequences add up to a business that feels increasingly irrelevant. That's not to say everything is the Avengers. You do see some smaller smaller studios, really taking creative risks with low-budget films, but the mid-budget film is slowly disappearing from the cinema landscape as more and more studios chase that mega-budget blockbuster lottery strike. It makes business sense for the studios to focus as much energy and money as possible on the biggest films that will generate the most revenue down the line. And that makes it harder to justify smaller films unless their budgets are really small, under 20 million, as opposed to a mid-budget film in the 50 to 80 million range. Studios will still put out some mid-budget comedies and romances, and there will always be smaller production companies like Alcon that'll be willing to foot the bill for smaller films because they don't need all those spin-off opportunities to be profitable. But with content from entertainment driving more and more of these big studios' growth, those smaller films become much harder to justify. In short, the stars have faded. The audiences are leaving in record numbers, and the film industry is gutting itself to chase potentially higher and higher returns, only to often leave empty-handed. Currently, they're leaning heavily on the Chinese market and stale franchises to save them. Perhaps in the future, they'll start making movies tailored to other high-population markets, like India. Regardless, with tensions across the globe ratcheting up politically, these markets could close themselves off in the blink of an eye. Part 3. Dreams. Now, what would the ideal collapse scenario look like for appreciators of cinema? In my view, I would love to see the distribution method of films completely shatter. The near monopoly that the MPAA and cinema groups hold over the industry is crippling to smaller films, and an industry collapse would allow for more local theaters with fewer mandated restrictions to pop up and still be profitable. A true shattering of the current cinema system would return the art form to the Wild West of filmmaking that existed in the 60s and 70s, where you could tell any story you could dream and possibly even find an audience with it, where the politics of suits, stocks, and superhero fast food franchises no longer composed the spinal column of an entire industry. Where would Walt Disney be if he were a young person looking to start an animation studio in LA today? I can see it now. Welcome to Starbucks. My name's Walt. What can I get for you? By putting films in the vice grip of corporations, we stifle the voices of those who could have affected generations of people with their stories. And for what? Iron Man 5? Transformers 10? Remakes of sequels to a remake? It's not worth it. Here's the beautiful thing though. We, yes, us little people, we can stop this machine. Part 4. Action. Let's do this together. Let's kill Hollywood. There are steps you can take to educate or suffocate the film industry through your personal habits without affecting your viewing habits much at all. Step 1. Don't see franchise films on opening night. If you simply must see them in the theater, then wait for a discount day. In my area, tickets on Tuesday nights are half off. Hollywood puts a silly level of weight on opening night numbers, so do what you can to reduce those numbers. 2. Inversely, show up on the opening night of movies you think the studio took a risk to make. Can you imagine a world where movies like Brigsby Bear or Kubo and the Two Strings garner more attendance than Transformers 6 does? There are always great movies being made that you can feel good about throwing your money at. You just have to know where to look. 3. There are many ways to see a movie that don't involve rewarding the people who made it, legal or otherwise. Don't buy tickets to, discs of, or streams of bad movies. If you must see a movie you know is crappy, work around the system. Now this can be entirely legal, such as buying a used copy or checking it out of the library. There are also illegal methods, which are bad. Don't do that. I would never do that. 4. Post your opinion of a movie you saw on social media. Inform your friends so they will know to stay away from a stinker or reward an unexpected winner. 5. Never spend money on a movie ticket or impulse movie buy without researching the film first. Be an informed consumer. Hollywood hates informed consumers. Now, if we could get every single person who watches movies to follow these 5 habits, then we could decapitate the current film industry's formula in less than a year, finally allowing the art form of filmmaking to undergo a rebirth and unleashing a new era of daring and imaginative movies. Now, this isn't gonna happen. The gilded hooks of Hollywood's ghost have pierced the flesh of audiences so deeply that it will continue to limp along on the power of stale nostalgia and glossy, mindless sheen until its slow stutter of a demise. The mass market's lack of desire to be informed consumers, coupled with the fresh injection of life from foreign markets, will continue to prop up this celluloid corpse of a cash cow, at least for now. But I think the symptoms are really there. The damage is really done. The film industry as we know it is only one truly catastrophic summer away from a raft of bankruptcies. Let's do what we can to speed that along. This has been Cinema Cemetery, digging 6 feet deeper into filmmaking culture. Hey, thanks for watching that video. If you liked what you saw, give us a like. If you didn't,
don't. We rotate through a series of shows, so there's always something new for you. We also have 2 stores. There's the Hungry Creature Boutique and the Cool People Cool Store. Also, if you like the music you heard in this episode, check out Fractal Impulse on Facebook and Bandcamp and Instagram, whatever social media, and all that stuff. Yeah, cool. Bye.